Hey, good evening. The Design Review Board number 2 public meeting of August 18th, 2011 is called to order. Please refrain from talking amongst yourselves and please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phones and pagers. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak, including applicants, is asked to completely fill out one of the speaker cards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff. You will be called to present an item and speak a specific item as desired. Anyone who wishes to be re-noticed about a project must completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff to receive notice of subsequent meetings. Current Design Review Board agendas are available by calling our Design Review Board hotline at 818-548-3171 or by visiting our website at www.ci.glendale.ca.us. A handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions, and Design Review Board appeals is available at the table by the front door. Please note that appeals must be filed within 15 calendar days of the Design Review Board decision date. The chairperson may reorder agenda items at his or her discretion. In terms of a roll call, Board Member Garagos?
Here.
Board Member Sakai?
Here.
Board Member Zarifian?
Here.
Chairman Malikian?
Here.
Report regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on August 10th, 2011. Oral communication. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. I do not have any oral communication cards. Chairman Malikian?
No, we don't.
None? Okay. Which brings us to staff announcements, which at this point in time there are none. There are no items on the consent calendar. We have 3 items on tonight's agenda. I would like to note that the third item on tonight's agenda, which would be case number 2-PDR 2011-002A, the project located at 3600 North Verdugo Road, which is a sign program, is being continued to a date uncertain, and it will be publicly re-noticed at that point in time. So again, 3600 North Verdugo Road is being continued to a date uncertain at this
Just to refresh my memory, that one we continued, but the public session was closed, and we were going to get more information
Correct.
on the details, correct?
So it will be continued and re-noticed at that point in time.
I think we continued it to a date certain, so it didn't
I
happen.
think it was
Well,
today.
it was continued to today,
No,
actually,
Right.
and unfortunately, the information is still coming, so it is being continued now to a date uncertain. So, that said, we do have 2 items on tonight's agenda, and I would like to turn the meeting over to Chairman Malikian.
Okay. Well, I think we're all ready. So let's go ahead and start with the 1535.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, board members. The first item for tonight's agenda is case number 2-PDR 2011-025A, located at 1535 Cleveland Road. The proposal is to demolish the existing 2,500 square foot one-story house, as well as the existing detached garage, and build a new 3,572 square foot two-story house with an attached 3-car garage. The proposal also includes a detached freestanding gazebo at the rear of the lot and a new pool. Subject property is located in the R11 zone. The existing house was built in 1949, and the house was surveyed and identified as a potential contributor to a potential historic district, but that district hasn't been recognized, so to speak. So it is not a historic district at the moment. There are a few oak trees and sycamore trees on the site which would eventually be required to get clearance from our city arborist before any building permits can be issued. Staff believes that the site planning is planned pretty well in terms of location of the building, location of the gazebo, and it works well with the site. However, one comment about the site planning would be the proposed circular driveway, which takes up a lot of the front yard space, and in result, it provides a lot of pavement or grass screen which is being proposed. Staff would like to see or recommends for the board to consider standard driveway, which will help eliminate a lot of the pavement and provide more green, more grass and other types of plants in the front. Staff cannot, at the moment, is not in a position to support the project, not because of the site planning, though. It has to do with the overall massing of the project. The way it is being proposed, the way it is being presented, staff believes it is a little too bulky, and a lot of the features, including the balcony at the rear, the entry, are somewhat monumental and are not very consistent with the proposed style of Mediterranean eclectic style. As well as the window proportions and the locations aren't as consistent as staff would like to see. In terms of architecture, the details provided are of good quality materials. However, the fascia board that is at the roof line is being proposed of being foam trim with cast or concrete over foam. Staff would like to see a different type of material instead of foam on that as well. So, again, staff simply cannot at this moment support the project based on its sheer massing. And this house is not the biggest house in the neighborhood. However, the way it's designed, it does look like it's the biggest house in the neighborhood. So that wraps up my presentation. I am available for questions, and applicant, homeowner are also here.
Okay. Do we have any questions for staff?
No, not right now.
All right, thank you. Aram Alajajan?
Good afternoon, members of the board. I'm Aram Alajajian, project architect for the proposed project here. 32 years in practice in city of Glendale, doing architecture, nothing else. In any event, I
Can
wanted
you also
to...
state your address, please?
My address is 320 Arden Avenue, Suite 120, city of Glendale.
Thank you.
Okay, I wanted to approach the board and basically walk you through the project.
Please.
And then I have a few points to discuss, basically, items that has been mentioned by staff, and I want to direct your attention the numbers that it's in the report. First of all, let me just go through the project and walk you through it and see,
Okay.
explain about
We
the
have
design.
the-
You can leave this here.
Just make sure you have 5 minutes to,
Yeah, it's not going to be sure.
so allow us to ask questions.
Well, it was my client's desire to come up with a new building there. Whether or not the existing structure is worth to remodel, that was out of question because there were termite damages and water damages on the property. So the best solution for him to come up with a new building and to move a newly formed family down here and be on a Cleveland Road. So here's the property, and the design takes it in consideration that we already have somewhat of an area that we can provide a sort of a turnaround driveway there, which is very common in a northwest area. You see a lot of homes with a turnaround driveways and a northwest Glendale area. And this is not a unique situation. This is one of the projects that has that. In fact, you can see it in this photograph. This project has it, and across from there are a number of projects in the area has that turnaround driveway, neighboring to this property. We started with providing a greater setback than it's normally required. Setback requires a 25 feet. We're providing close to 45 feet setback here, which will allow us within somewhat of 40 feet come up with a short fence area, which will then turn the area like a motor court or sort of a Spanish court area where the cars would be backing up. If there's any kind of a fear that the cars would be parked here or back up there, so that eliminates technically the car backup area. So it totally this ornamental gate, actually it's a short gate, it's not a too high one, sort of controls the parking and a backup area in front of the building. And the way it's designed, we're talking about the massing. I'm just going to go through these points. Let me first of all let you know. The first floor is generally, we have 3-car garage. We have an entry foyer, which requires to have a sort of a double height in order to clear the headroom for the staircase to go up to the second floor. And we have a living room, dining room, family room, a kitchen, and a guest room, or a guest bedroom here. And upstairs, we have 3 bedrooms, 1, 2, and 3. And a living room is time and a half in height. But talking about the massing and the proportion of the building, when you look at the building on a front facade like this, you think of this is all one elevation, but that's not true. You're starting at 45 feet, then it steps back. This is 1 story up to here. So from 45 feet to somewhere about 60 feet, the building is 1 story. It's almost like 20% or 25% of the lot depth. Then from there on starts the 2-story element, which will be this element here. So the major bulk would be concentrated on the center portion of the project, which is also step back here. You know, we're providing the about 6 to 7 foot setback here, but this is setback furthermore. So if you look at it in a front elevation, what you see is mainly you see this portion, which will come up to the front at 45 feet. This is at 60 feet, and this is about 80 feet from the store. I mean, from the front property line. And then we have those layers of, the ornamental gate, and the height of the garage, and then it steps up to the smaller height of the windows of the bedroom, and then it steps up to the midsection, which is the highest allowable height of the building. That is the 28 feet. So it does, when you do a rendering as a facade, it does look, bulky, or because you're taking from property line to property line, you're rendering that. But this is what, you're going to see in reality. So unfortunately, this is a smaller rendering here, but this shows the real picture of after the building is complete, what you're going to see. And then looking from the side elevation, which would be the south elevation here, again, the living room area is sort of shortened. And then we have stepping back all these elements.
We need to
Okay.
kind of wrap
So,
up. You
where,
mentioned something about the numbers, so I think that's...
okay, I want to go through that, over that,
We'll ask you if you have questions about
Sure.
the design, so let's...
Let me do that. Okay, if you look at the, I think it's a second page on the report. If you look at the comparably, the lot sizes, the setback, the required setback is 25 feet. We're providing, average setback is 37. We're providing 45 feet, 4 inches. This is not such a big house, everything. I'm not going to run through this table, and floor area ratio 22%, which 30% is allowed. Lot coverage is 26%, where 40% is allowed. Height is, we're not exceeding the height. The setbacks are there, and the required garages is there. So whatever is designed per code and per guidelines. And it's a matter of interpretation of how bulk would read as a bulkier structure, how one could envision that as a bulkier structure. To us, it's really broken down. It's like an L-shaped building. It's not a box sitting there. So it's an architectural approach. Then having all those openings, and then articulation through the windows and some areas that are coming in and out of the building, I think it responds to all of that. And I talked about the circular driveway also. Sample and materials are there if you have any questions. One small detail here on the cornice on the top, we don't use the real cast stone because of the weight. And just for the information, City of Beverly Hills requires the thickness of that concrete over the foam to be no less than 3/4 inches on 1 inch. And we have done projects over there, and it looks beautiful. I think that our intention is to use about a 1 inch thick concrete over the foam.
All right. Do we have any questions for the architect?
I sort of do.
Okay.
I would like to, I think one of the questions, and it goes to the massing question, on, I can get a number 3, but just in general, like on number 4 about reduce the size and scale of the entry. Can you talk a little bit about how you see that entry? Because to be honest, I think it does seem a little bit massive, and I want to know what your feeling was about it.
Okay. Let me respond to that. I think there is a tendency in Glendale to think of if you have a time and a half of an entry, it's going to overpower and kill everything. I think that kind of thinking got to stop somehow, because architecture, it's a relations of the forms and openings itself. I mean, proportionally, I think the opening with a double height door, it's very inviting. If you look at throughout other cities, what other projects are being developed and so forth, this is no exception. I mean, this is very comparable to most of the homes that are built in America. To bring down that, hey, anybody could do it. I think this justifies itself to have a grand entry, and that's the desire I think we expressed here, and I think it flows pretty good with the proportions of the building.
Okay.
One more question.
One question?
How do you explain the relationship of the new structure with the longer life of the neighborhood, or the immediate kind of architecture of the neighborhood?
Okay. Well, as far as the number of stories concerned, or
No, I mean generally in terms of its overall expression, size, and relationship to the character of the neighborhood.
Okay, well, there are a few homes in the area that very much close to this design. If you go a street up and drive towards east, and on the right-hand side, there's a new project just being approved by the board. It's nothing that been approved in 1980s. Was under construction about a few months ago. I think it's completed now. It's very much like this kind of a design. This is no stranger to that. And there are elements in the buildings within the street. And I kind of made a copy of from the Google. Those highlighted yellow highlighted buildings are two-story. They very much carry on the similar elements that I have. We are expressed here. I mean, it's not too visible here, but I think the photos that
You need to speak in the mic.
the pink highlighted is the subject property. Those are the yellow highlighted are there two-story buildings in the area, and they do carry similar elements of Spanish or Mediterranean architecture.
Any more questions?
One of staff's comments was to provide lushness in landscaping, because a lot of the houses in the neighborhood have a lush landscape look. I noticed you have a landscape plan in here, which I greatly appreciate. And a lot of the plantings that you have along that low-height fence in the front between the circular driveway and they could be either a tall shrub or they can be a short shrub. Is your intention to make it a tall shrub to kind of block the filigree fence work, or is your intention to make it a short shrub so that the fence is visible to the street?
Well, we can, in the rendering over there, we're showing the shrubs, the perspective that it's almost halfway to that fence. So we like to see the terraces stepping up, from a 6-inch curb, starting from a lawn that is confronting the street sidewalk, and then we have an 18-inch curb at the
So your intention
at the end of the driveway. Yeah, the intention is to create these terraces visually also when you're coming in closer to the property. Yeah, I think it's a good idea to pass that around. And then we have about 4 feet high shrubs in front of the fence, and behind the fence there's also landscaping, as you can see.
All right, thank you. And the next, which is a neighbor, Ward 10, Achabakan.
Good evening, Ellen. How are you?
Very good.
Hello, everybody. I'm a neighbor. I live very close by on
Please state your
Thompson.
name and address, please.
Barton Achabayan, 1522 Thompson Avenue. Very close by. I've been living in the area since 1991, and a very proud neighbor. Honestly, looking at the design of this house, I think this is very common, as all of you will acknowledge me. This is a very common design, and I support it very much. In fact, we have to thank people like this who spend a lot of money in beautifying our neighborhoods, don't you think? So, I mean, what I'm trying to say is, dwelling on a driveway situation or bulky situation, I think is just frivolous, honestly. I mean, you mentioned about seeming bulky. I mean, the key word is seeming. Seeming is a perception. What seems bulky to you may not, in reality, be bulky. or what seems bulky to one or two people may not be bulky. And I'm full force in favor of this. Also, about the driveway, about being circular. There are many circular driveways, be it from 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s. People have always built driveways circular. It's a matter of choice. I don't think it should be really a problem of having a circular driveway. I know quite a few neighbors who are in favor of projects like this. In fact, instead of dwelling on minor issues, whether it's foam or concrete, circular driveway, straight driveway, we should thank the people who built beautify our neighborhoods and not let the old houses in the 1940s, 1930s remain like that. And that's the point I'm trying to make. And I'm full force in favor of such projects.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Valerie Gardner?
Hi, I'm Valerie Gardner. I live at 1545 Cleveland Road. I know he said he was a neighbor, but I'm not quite sure where Thompson Street is. But we are direct neighbors. And I have quite a few concerns. This is the first time we've seen the drawings. I would agree with you that it looks way too grand. It stands out. It doesn't go along with the character of the neighborhood, I would say, at all. There's not a single house in the neighborhood that has a 3-car garage that's attached to the building. I don't know how that kind of got, passed through or how it got up there. But all the other houses have a driveway with a garage, at the back. I'm concerned about the glass entrance and just the size and the magnitude of that. The homes in our neighborhood, have wooden doors, and they're all much smaller scale. I'm also really concerned about the foliage. It looks like the setback is 6 feet on the sides of the house, and on our side, if they're building that close, there won't be any room. Well, I'm wondering if there's any room for bushes. And if not, they will be just towering directly over our yard with no foliage. So I'm not sure if there's a landscaping plan that would show the details. It would be, the north side?
Which side are you on? Which side
We're
are you
on, so if you're looking at the house, we're the one with the dumpster in front that we had.
on the right side.
Yeah, on the right side. So the side that we would share, I'm concerned about the landscaping and, but
Do you
I'm.
know by any chance if your building sits 20 feet within the property line?
Our building?
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's way set back. What's,
Talking about side to
The
side.
side.
Side to side?
Oh, much greater than that.
Yeah,
Much
there's-
greater.
yeah, our yard is,
there's sides of-
our yard is right there. But yeah, the overall design, it feels much more like they're trying to create an estate-looking house, like with the little wall and the drive-up driveway, so.
Ask you a question. Is your lot a double lot or a single lot?
The double lot.
It's actually four.
4 lots.
4
Well, I mean,
Okay.
on the, on the
Yeah,
street
double
width,
wide.
it's double wide. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Liz Brown?
Hi, my name's Liz Brown, and I'm at 1610 Cleveland Road. And I also have a concern about the bulkiness of the building because it's really not consistent with the other homes on that side of the street. This home, the lot size is around 15,000 square feet, where the homes further up the street have larger lots, around 36,000 square feet. So there's a lot more room for green. And as I've looked at it, or the poles that are up there, there's just, even though it's perhaps, I guess, a 6-foot side setback, it's basically, from one person's fence to the next, you can maybe put a pathway in. So it's really sort of just this massive building across the street. Also, there's on that side and like further down the street from, I guess, to the south of this house, the homes are smaller. I mean, they're one-story homes, and across the street they're one-story homes. So the sort of estate homes that are further up the street are also in proportion to their lots. So all those homes have really large side setbacks, and that's what makes it feel, it sort of gives the neighborhood a fabulous feeling because there's lots of large trees, there's just lots of green, and this home is just sort of in your face. So those are my concerns, that it doesn't, and the architecture doesn't fit in to the neighborhood. It's very much, I think, sort of a suburban mini mansion type of home, which is really not what makes Glendale so great, because we have many different styles of character homes that were built, in the 30s and 40s. And they're beautiful if they're restored and taken care of. They're, fabulous homes. So this concerns me very much, that this new construction is not really not fitting into the street.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You have 2 minutes if you want to reply back.
I just want to, go over a few items that I heard from the neighbors, and I do appreciate you coming out for critics on this. Actually, there's a 3-car garage right 2 doors north of you, on my subterranean.
Can you speak in the mic?
Yeah,
rather
it's
than-
I don't recall the address, but we designed the building. Yes. Yeah, and a 3-car garage is
You're
something it's
addressing us,
required.
not the-
Yeah, it's a 3-car garage is something it's required by code. We would like to provide 2-car garage, but the 3-car is something required by code. And I want to tell you, the entry is not just a glass; it's a beveled glass, and it has a wood frame around it, and it's just going to look very nice when it's done and complete. And it's a very wide wood frame. It's about 6 inches on its side, so in combination, it creates about a foot of the frame itself. And the glass area is about 2.5 feet insert, which is done with a beveled glass. It's a 1/4-inch thick glass, and it's beveled. We can provide a detail for that if it's necessary. Now, the 6-foot setback is a proper setback, and if we're talking the area where the building is closer to the property line, there's no structure or a building in that area. I believe the building is a setback, and that lot is pretty deep, and all the way to the depth of the building. You're right. That's sort of that's 6 feet, or that side would be confronting where the trailer is. I hope it's temporary. I don't know if it's on the right-hand side of the picture. Yeah. So that's the closest element to that. That's it. If you have
Okay.
any other questions,
Thank you. All right, the public session is closed. Would you like to start? No?
Sure, I'll start.
Want me to
You got to
start?
start sometime.
Gotta start somewhere. Did you want to start? Got at the top.
Go ahead.
Where do I begin? I've been writing down a lot of comments, a lot of how to talk about. I think looking through the drawing package, looking at this design, I was really blown away by the attention to detail, the amount of information that's in here, and so I wanted to actually appreciate that all was in the package, and that you did think through a lot of the issues that we generally talk about, like window details and landscaping and that kind of thing that we're always asking for from applicants we never get. So that, I commend you for a great package, and I think that design-wise and what you're presenting is a beautiful house. It's a beautiful site plan, it's a beautiful house, but I don't feel 100% that this belongs in this site, and this is the reason why. So I went to visit the area, and yes, there are mansion-style houses on large, gracious lots north of this property. There are single-story homes on less than gracious lots on to the south of this property. And this property happens to be that property that is the dividing line, where you transition from one to the next. So, does it become just a stopping point where you have big homes and all of a sudden falls off a cliff and you have smaller homes. I think that needs to address both, well, it doesn't need to, but it could address both the larger and the smaller. And I think one of the neighbors' points about, homes being on the property that fit the property size, this home, by going 6 feet on setbacks on either side, feels like it's going from edge to edge, the maximum it could possibly go, from edge to edge, a 28-foot maximum height, and it's trying to fill the entire, space that you're allowed. And I think that that's not the approach that we're trying to go for when we say these are your your maximum setbacks that you can go to. That we'd like to say that, yes, in the worst case scenario, go to 6 feet, but we'd like to see it where it's designed such that it fits with the neighbor's house or the neighborhood. On the north side of the property, I couldn't quite tell how much was built in there because it seems like a lot of foliage, and so I would feel more comfortable having a 6-foot setback because the property to the north has more landscaping, and so you can kind of borrow that landscaping to buffer between home to home so it doesn't feel like a house and a house are butt up against each other, and you have the privacy buffer of all the landscaping. On the south side of the property, I feel like there's a 2-story monster house that's 6 feet away from a fence that's, 6 or 10 feet away from a house. And there's no opportunity for landscaping to go between your house and the neighbor's property. So you're putting ownership onto them again to provide that lushness and the screening, which your north side neighbor is actually providing for you. So I think in terms of the massing, I'd feel more comfortable if either the south side became a single-story house, if it stepped in more like a 10-foot setback and you had an allowance place for landscaping to go so that it did create more of a feel that this house is on its lot and there's a buffer all the way around it. In terms of the driveway, I think that there are instances on the street where they have that kind of a driveway situation. I'm kind of torn either way. I think it's fine. I think the landscaping plan shows much more native and drought tolerant and gracious, more landscaping than this image is showing, and I actually prefer the landscape plan to what your image is showing. And I think that the hedges that the landscape architect has shown on the plan will create a higher hedge line against your decorative fence, which makes your fence sort of obsolete and goes away, but will give the whole site more of a lush green and private feel, which actually may help your cause. So, if the gate's the only thing left of the whole design, I think that is actually a better thing than having all this wrought iron and a big house behind it and lower shrubs in front of it, which is what your intention was. And then the entryway, I think that it does, to me, it looks a little out of place, and I think it's partly because it's too massive, or maybe because it's part of the house and the roof line is part of the house. It's not like it's differentiated from the house roof line, so it becomes just another volume that comes off of the main roof. And I think that the windows that you have behind that, they look too modern for me because of the wide trims, and it's rectangular in shape, and everything else you have in the front is arch tops, and they're very narrow, and they've got the stucco in between the glazing elements, so they feel like smaller windows. In this case, it's one big window, which you're trying to break it up with wider mullions, but that ends up looking more contemporary instead of looking more period. And so I think that maybe that might help to kind of rethink what that element is. Is it arched on top? Is it maybe 3 separate elements that have more of a wall feel of separate glazing pieces instead of just one piece of glazing that has trim on it? Maybe the entry element, I don't know, maybe it's angled or lowered or something happens to it. And maybe, my fellow board members have an opinion on what it could look like to help it along. I'm also kind of conflicted with all these shapes going on. You have a lot of narrow windows, so they're very little arches, and I think that that's very appropriate for the area. Then you have one big arch with a surround around it that doesn't really fit with, well, it kind of fits with the small other piece, but it has much more of a like McMansion, I hate to say Orange County tract home, but I always think of that feel to it. And then then you have a curving piece that comes out, and it has a small curved roof line on it that doesn't quite match any of the other roofs. And so I think that all too plays into this. It's not quite all these breakups that work together, and that maybe that by breaking it up in a way that becomes more of a one period, that might help the massing. I think that's all my comments.
Wow. Wow, you covered a lot. Never heard you speak so.
Left no ground left. I like to follow that. Okay,
You need to follow
let's
that.
have some way.
Or just add, I guess,
etc.
Ditto.
Again, I commend the package. It's a very nicely done package and very detailed. I think a lot of the stuff you provided, I think, helps us communicate to you, at least for me, what some of the issues are. I personally don't have a problem with the second floor. I don't have a problem with the footage that you're putting on it. I think the style of building can handle what could be considered a boxier structure. The Mediterranean or Spanish style is that boxier kind of structure. So all those aspects of it, I really don't have problems with. I just think that there's, when you look at the front of a building, the way that you do the openings or windows or whatnot is telegraphing kind of the scale of what it's trying to project. And I think the elements that are on the front are trying to project a little bit bigger building and a little bit bigger site than what is actually there. And I think that's what the difficulty is, at least for me. What's interesting is this one. I'm glad you brought it, and I think it just helps to understand. It's kind of a dichotomy, because I think in some ways you want to say your house is consistent because it's similar to these homes, but in reality this lot is similar to all these homes. So I think that's the trouble, is that the kind of massing that you're doing, is a structure that works with that kind of spacing and distance between buildings. So I think that's part of the trouble that I have, is that, it is more like this section scale-wise. But I don't think that kind of footage would be wrong on that lot. I just think in some ways it's the way it's done. I think when you look at a house just to the north, that could be considered a bulky or boxy kind of structure. That's what I'm saying. I don't think the style necessarily means that you have to break it up more. I think a lot of times Spanish and Mediterranean that's broken up too much, I think destroys the texture of the house. So I don't have a problem with that. I personally have a problem with the large entry, because I think a lot of homes that are done like that, especially there's beautiful homes in Glendale or in San Marino or Pasadena that do a very large Spanish home, and they'll have maybe a 10-foot, 9 or 10-foot opening, and then they'll do a decorative window above, and then you read the two together as a larger element, but you're not creating an actual larger double height opening. I personally also have trouble with kind of the double height entry thing, because I think unless there's that kind of structures on the street, I think it is inconsistent. So that's the basis of my issue on that. Also, I think one of the things that kind of telegraphs, and I guess this is sort of a shorthand pejorative, is to say the Orange County spec house, but I sort of have a trouble with that kind of eave detail, because I think it adds a heaviness and a monumentality that's not helping you. Because I think what it's doing is, again, you're trying to connect more to the homes that are north of you, but you don't have that kind of site that helps support that style. So, I don't have a problem with the hip roof or, again, the sizing of it. I just think the elements on it are working against you, which is making it too heavy and too monumental. So, again, to answer one of the people that came up and talked, the reason we're here is to be that gray area between the code and what the particular site is happening. So obviously, I would like to see projects do. I'm very happy that people are here to do it, but the reason we're here is to be that gray area between the code and what is actually happening on site. So I support the project. I just think there has to be some modifications that make it more consistent with the homes that are south of it. There's a softness that I think you could bring to it. You can still have that kind of form and kind of mass and strength that you have, but just not as heavy and grand. Because I think, like I said, you're trying to make it more like this, but you're really more consistent with the ones that are south of you, just in terms of what you have to work with. So I can be more specific as we go forward.
Okay, thank you.
My turn. I think there's no question that this is a well-designed house, and for its own language, everything is very consistent and well-planned, well-designed. Somehow, to make, because there was a lot said, I don't want to repeat everything, but I think there are two things. One is the weight of the house, and the character is, the weight is heavy in terms of its relationship to the neighborhood. The big eaves, and for its own size, everything is proportional, but when you look at it in the neighborhood, it has a weight that it's more than the adjoining sort of character of the place. Then the second thing is that it has a flamboyant kind of a way of doing everything that I think if this was a humble two-story building, that would have been one thing. But essentially, if there was a way to build this house in one day and you took the old house and put the new one, you would have said, oh my God, what happened? Because it's just so big for the 12-foot high floor to first floor to the plate. It's basically something that I don't think any of the houses, if you look at this streetscape, I don't think you'll find that in any of them. And that's partially part of the reason that the house all of a sudden attains such a height that makes it bigger. I like the design of the house very much. I think it's two things: too big for the site and too heavy for the neighborhood. And don't want to repeat everything, but I think the front face, the front fence, again, flamboyant is what I can name it, and there's nothing flamboyant about the neighborhood. Even the two-story houses, there's some sort of a humble level of scale and detail that goes with the rest of the neighborhood. I think you can achieve it. I mean, I think for me the best elevations are the sides and the back, but it's just so tight in the side that makes it kind of too big. That's all I have.
Thank you. Okay. What was said, and I agree pretty much with most of the stuff that is said, including the package, and I think the amount of information that we have right now it helps us understand the project. One comment Ms. Kai mentioned about the volume, the size of the building, that it's literally feels like it's taking all these the minimum setbacks and it's creating its volume. So I'm going to try to take another approach and try to give some suggestions that may solve the problem rather than discuss the community and the massing within the context and so forth. One quick observation that I've noticed that I think may help the whole entire volume and the massing of the project is that I have to make a general comment on the plate heights that you've created. I see two primary plate heights. I think what it's going to help is to start, just like you started playing with the left side of, if you're looking on the east elevation, on the left side you have these different levels. Primarily you have one plate height that is at the top, and it's giving you this consistent roof line that covers the entire second floor. And then you have the garage plate height, which that gives you the most primary massing of the volume that it's closest to the street. The other observation that I made was that you went through a lot of explanation of how you located the property facing the street, which I commend you for that. It's set back. There's a good potential of covering or creating foliage as it is on the northern property and the southern property and so forth. But what it's lacking is, as Ms. Sakai mentioned, is on the south and potentially on the north. And I think the same effort that has gone into the north part of the property or the facing east should somehow, being that if this is going to be a maximum of 28-foot volume in relation to the property on the adjacent, that some sort of a thought needs to go into that. Maybe the massing of the volume gets lower closer as you get closer to the northern or the southern part, and then start stepping back up. Also, one quick comment on the square footage. I don't have a problem with the size, but simply if you reduce 60 square feet, you will be able to eliminate one garage, one parking space. I know you mentioned that it's code that you're required to have 3 parking spaces, but you're 3572, so actually it's 72, you reduce 73 square feet. That not only reduces the overall mass of the building, but yet you're taking almost 200 square foot chunk, or not 200, well, yeah, about 200 square feet of, or so, chunk of the garage out on its own as well. So I think combination of all of these in the comments, I think it will definitely bring this. But in overall, I think the character of the neighborhood plays a huge role of us making a decision of what we think that fits there. If a project like such, this one has been presented, if it's being presented and this is the desired style that we want to have there, I think based on the mass and the volume, certain emphasis need to go on to the site locationing and the setbacks and the heights and the volume and other elements that are dictating the design of the project. I think that covers my overall comment of the project. I would be kind of looking back once we get back, and if this turns out to be a return for redesign, I would look into the windows that are facing the street. All the windows that are facing the street are arched at some level, but as you turn, so if you look at the south elevation, pretty much every window that is going to be visible from the street, they're square top. So at some level, I think you want the design, even we're looking at it from outside, but you're standing inside the room, and then you're looking out, you have these arched windows, but then as you turn, you have the square top. So I think at that, that needs to be looked at as well. I don't have a problem of bringing that back, but again, from the north, south, and the east elevation, some consistency need to be looked at. Also, you went through a lot of designing the railing and the gates. I think that should be carried throughout the entire project rather than using a very generic handrails in the back, being that it's not going to be visible. I think some consistency need to be emphasized in the detail of everything else that is being proposed. I would highly recommend looking at the front entry. I know it's desired to have this massive, grandiose entrance, and I appreciate the effort that you're going through making this a beveled glass and wood detail, which I commend you for that, for all the qualities that is being proposed. But I think the massing and this emphasis in the details need to be looked at a little bit more carefully and based on the overall mass of the project. My last recommendation would be is meet with the neighbors and listen to the staff and not wait for 3 months to come here to hear the same thing, as I'm sure staff has mentioned this as well. That's my overall comment. So anything else we want to add, or do we want to go ahead and...
Yeah, I just want to mention a perspective of looking at this. You know, when you remodel a house, you like the remodeling to be done in a way that you never realize there's been a remodeling. and it makes the house better, and it becomes a new house. I think you can look at that same thinking about the neighborhood. When you're changing a house in a neighborhood, you're basically remodeling the neighborhood. I think this house sort of becomes more about itself. It kind of becomes less about the neighborhood. So I would suggest to think about it in those terms and see. I'm not saying copy the neighborhood, but it could be a very modern house, for example, but it still could be very much in line with the scale and the feel and the character of the neighborhood. So that's my suggestion and sort of recommendation to think in the way that you can think about the project.
I'd sort of like it to be clear, at least for the applicant, to know a couple of things. I mean, I would like to clarify, do we have a problem with the 12-foot plate, and is the footage a problem? I mean, I think they should go away with a clear understanding of those.
I think if I was the applicant, I would, as I said before, I would take the approach of the east elevation. Creating a 40-foot setback allows you to have a 12-foot plate height. But when you have a 6-foot setback, doesn't allow you to have a 28-foot plate height or a 20-foot plate height.
Okay.
That's
I think that's good. Just to be
what
clear,
I would take from what. So I think, if that's the approach that they want to have to maximize as far as the setbacks, maybe the plates. I don't know. I think in overall the massing needs to be looked at.
I just want to give them clear direction, that's all. I don't want to be too vague.
So do we want to go over the comments, or do we want to...
Yes, I'll quickly go over some of the comments that I heard, and if I do miss something, please feel free to jump in, I guess. The overall feel that I got from the board looks like that the board is pretty much in agreement with staff in terms of the design's massing, the project's massing. And as Mr. Garagos mentioned, the house itself may not be inappropriately designed, but it just doesn't fit in the neighborhood. And it sounds like the major issue we're having here is how it fits in the neighborhood. And as Ms. Sakai mentioned, the transition point from larger homes, larger lots to the smaller neighborhoods, smaller homes, this should be a transition point, and the house should be designed to provide that transition instead of standing out on its own and being just another large home closer to the smaller neighborhood. That's the feeling I got. And the entry was also part of the contributor to the overall mass of the project. And if that was lowered, if the sides were stepped back and the east elevation was used as an example to design the rest of the house and provide step back instead of lowering the plate heights, might help with reducing the mass of the project. And front landscaping, if it was higher shrubs, would help conceal some of the decorative fence, which, as Mr. Maliki mentioned, the fencing should be used throughout the rest of the house, as well as the balconies in the back. Instead of providing simpler fence, they should be consistent, whatever the final design ends up being.
But can I?
Yeah.
I think actually it should be the reverse. You should simplify the.
All right,
fencing.
as long as consistency is provided, I suppose.
I meant as creating consistent
Yeah.
details rather than
Yeah.
picking either one. So
If I may, I think we've heard a clear sensibility from the board, but we've heard a lot of different suggestions, kind of divergent suggestions. So if I may recommend that we first go through staff's recommended conditions to see how the board feels about them, because staff had a similar sensibility about the overall project, and then we could go through some of the very specific suggestions that the board made to see what level of agreement there is on those.
All right, I'll just go over the 7 recommended conditions by staff, and we'll go from there. So number 1 was to replace some of the walls and the fences in the front and provide shrubs and trees.
when you say some of the walls, what do you mean some of the walls?
Well, there seems to be overwhelmingly more walls and fences that could could be replaced where there's a wall or a pylon next to a walkway or driveway.
Talking about this
The front setback
this-
area, correct.
this gate.
Correct.
Yeah, if we take items 1 and 2 together, I think the sense that staff had is there's a lot more hardscape designed on the property than there is on the neighboring properties, particularly the properties that are larger with larger houses have more generous landscaping and not such large areas of hardscape. And so if you take items 1 and 2 together, that was really the recommendation, to have less hardscape and more landscape. So we're wondering if the board agrees with us on
Essentially
that.
eliminating the circular driveway.
Eliminating the circular driveway, having fewer walls and just more landscaping, rather than having fences and walls. That was our recommendation. We're asking if the board agrees with that recommendation.
For me specifically, since you have this area in front for your cars to come in, back out, and go down the driveway, there really is no need for a circular driveway. It's more of a look. I kind of feel like it looks okay with the landscape provided because he's providing landscape areas. His idea of having it terrace up to step up from lower to higher, if we say yes, the landscape plan as provided is the material, we have a higher 8-foot, 6-foot high shrub instead of this decorative fence that creates the same stepped up look, also giving you more landscape, then I think it would probably be okay to have the circular driveway. But again,
So
it's sort of unnecessary.
From what I understand is the circular driveway could stay. It doesn't appear too inappropriate. However,
I'd like
taking
to
the
see
recommendation or the recommended condition, putting it apart, one half of it appears to be appropriate. The other half could be redesigned in terms of the fences facing the street.
I guess for me, if you kept the circular driveway, I would get rid of the fences. I mean, you could put in a fencing system, but have it be shrubs. So the
understand.
shrubs are what's visible from the street.
Okay.
That's my
I think the rest of the board agrees. We're pretty clear on that.
what's right.
I think it might be, since you were developing motor court, that if you didn't do the circle, you could almost expand the motor court a little bit more. And there is a nice landscaping area on the other side of the garage, but that could almost expand and then give more landscaping to the front yard. So you had a driveway coming up to a little bit more expanded.
Let me ask you this. Yes or no to circular driveway? Let's make it easy. I mean, do
I
we
think you
want
could-
the circular or not?
I'm not going to design it for him. I
Yeah,
think he has a choice.
I just also want to provide the board with input that we have received input on other occasions from the community as to an opposition, a general opposition to circular driveway. Now, we haven't heard that in particular on this project, in this property, but we've heard that in general fairly consistently.
I think my other concern with this property is that since it is narrower than the other lots north of it, which have circular driveways, but my concern is that it's such a tight radius that it almost feels like driveway.
Yeah.
There's no space in between.
Has it been reviewed by the traffic engineer to even meet the circular?
Not yet, but it should be able to meet the 25-foot turn radius.
Okay.
I think for me, if it's a little bit, if it's allowed, I think what's different in this case is that there actually is a motor court, as opposed to this
Right.
circular driveway being the only driveway,
Right.
which means you're almost going to have to park on it if you have a car there. I mean, in some ways, there is a motor court that could handle a car beyond. So, and then if you did the sort of grass screed or something in front of you, it helps break up a little bit of the hardscape. So I'm not in opposition really to the circular drive, because I think there's some extenuating circumstances if they had a motor court. I mean, the preference for me would be to do a nice drive that went up to a more embellished motor court, and then you would have the nice front yard, a nice driveway, a very dramatic driveway that went up to a more established motor court. I mean, that would be my preference, but
What about you?
preference, I think if it's allowed, I think they should be
I
able
think
to.
to keep the answers short and concise,
Yes.
I would say no. I mean not that to just because I usually want to say it less than more, but
I'm gonna put
I
the
think
clock on you right now.
I think the driveway again, like the house, looks too big for the site. I think the site is too tight for a circular driveway. I almost kind of wonder how the car is going to turn there. So I think a simple driveway would be more appropriate for the site.
Okay, simple job. Right, because then you have a motor court to handle the backing up and turning around.
Okay, so I think that's clear. And then regarding the fences, we've heard some positive suggestions about the fences, but also that a suggestion that the fence and gate is too flamboyant for the rest of the neighborhood. So if there can be a sensibility that we can get agreement on whether or not the fence is appropriate as it's designed, if there's agreement that shrubs should be in place of the fence and that the gate could or should remain for that level of security that's desired. Some direction on that piece would also be useful, and then we'll move on to number 3.
I'll answer very quickly. I think when somebody pushes their house back that far and does a motor court beyond the setback, they should have a little bit of flexibility and put into a fence. And I think the flamboyant nature of it, that it is wrought iron and not a stucco wall, all those things work in its favor. So I don't have a problem with the wall and doing that. I mean, if somebody's going to the extent of really pushing their house back, they ought to be able to put a fence up.
I'm still in favor of the tall shrubs
No,
for the fence.
I agree. I think these kind of fences, when they're far, especially when they're far back enough, they tend to disappear easier.
And it's wrought iron, too, in a free-form shape.
And you can plant your shrub in front of it.
I would plant my tall shrubs in front of the fence, just because I think it creates more of that lush landscape look in the front, and then you have the house behind it, versus just a house that's all these little things in front of it.
Number 4?
Okay, actually, number 3 is reconsider the design in terms of mass and scale to provide a less monumental configuration and appearance.
Okay, so we heard a fair amount about this. If I could just summarize what we've heard and see if we can get some consensus on a particular condition. We did hear it would be useful to have a reduction in the mass at the south side in relation to the neighboring house there, or an additional setback. On the north side, we heard that the massing might be okay, provided that there is some landscape screening. We did hear a fairly unanimous consensus about the design of the entry as appearing too monumental and not fitting with the rest of the neighborhood, that there is a possibility to have perhaps a 10-foot high entry with an opening on top that reads together in a way that has an impressive appearance that's not monumental and out of character with the neighborhood. There was a discussion that a taller plate height, or floor-to-floor height, if you will, at the front of the house where there's a large setback is appropriate, but less appropriate where the setback is 6 feet, which is frankly a little confusing for staff to figure out how one would implement a different plate height on one side of the house than the other. So if we can have a little bit more clarity on if there's a consensus to reducing the scale of the house on the south side. There was also the suggestion of a minor reduction in floor area to enable the reduction in the size of the garage, which is also a massing suggestion.
My comment on the plate heights, the reason for me that it feels so big, then when you look at the elevation from the east, you see that this whole thing, the entire top hat of the structure, it's all sitting in one plate height. So I think by simply lowering maybe even the front entry to something, that gives a variation there. Maybe one of the bedrooms are set down, lower, and I don't even know the plate height on the, bedroom height.
So what you're looking for with that comment is a variation in roof height, essentially.
I think
Is that right?
I think so.
Okay.
Actually, it may not have been your intent of your comment, but I think what I was taking from your comment that I agreed with was that the floor height is not a problem when you have that setback, but if you were narrower, that's an issue. So
Exactly.
it's not so much that you're varying the floor heights, it's that if you want to have that floor to floor, it's going to be an issue on the side yard. Not that you're going to vary them, but that if you want that, it's going to be a problem on the side. That's,
So set
Thank
it
you.
back more or do
Yeah.
something different with that room.
Right.
So it has a different floor height.
that plate height creates a problem on the side,
Right.
not that you want it to vary.
I agree.
That's what I took away from it.
Right. Thank you.
The other thing is I think of the two elevations, the south one, I think is more successful than the north. That, I don't really have a problem with that one. I think the north is more of an issue, and also, I don't know why that balcony would be there. I think that's, especially on the 6-foot side, you're the closest point, and you have a balcony, I think that's an issue. I think that would be an issue.
I mean, that right there has a good opportunity, cutting the roof back, maybe it's facing north, so you can cut
Yeah.
the roof back there, maybe add a trellis or a wood detail or something there.
Lower roof instead
or
of the
lower
balcony.
roof or something there.
So more three-dimensional expression on the north side because it appears too monumental. The south elevation is preferable, but it does also, what we're also hearing is that some of the elements may still be too tall and variation in the roof height is desirable.
Yeah, but I think the south elevation is more successful. That what actually comes to the setback is the lowest point, and then it's growing as it's getting back. That's
Okay. And for the rear elevation, I don't know if staff mentioned in the conditions, but in the body of the report, there was a mention that the rear elevation, although it's in the rear, it appears to have a modern flavor and to be a little bit also monumental, so we wanted a little feedback on that for the applicant.
The west elevation.
That's not as
The
much of
west
a concern for me.
Yeah, it's the back of the house, but I think, if you're going to have two openings side to side, why is one squared off and one arched? Why aren't they consistent? That's my only comment. Why doesn't it, it's back? Good west.
Okay, and then also included in the mass and scale, we heard about reducing the size and scale of the entry. I think there's agreement on condition number 4. Condition number 5, I think.
I don't want to belabor the point, but let me just
Yes.
make one comment on it that I think will be helpful. I think the issue on that is that the entry is its own roof form, and because it's reading as a roof form, it's feeling bigger, as opposed to it being part of the house that this was a hole cut into. That's what's creating the larger sense of the entry. I think that's what we're going to.
But we also heard that bringing the roof down on the entry would provide variation.
Sure, yeah.
So,
I'm saying it's because it's reading as its own element, it's seeming big.
okay.
If it was just the wall of the building that this was a hole cut into, it wouldn't be as big of an issue.
So in short, it could either, if it is its own element, it should be brought down, but if it's not, it should be better integrated into the overall building.
And then it addresses number 5 as well.
Okay.
So I think
And we
that-
heard some very specific comments from Board Member Sakai that we'll include. Item number 6, I think what we heard is that the design of the fence is not inappropriate and that the railings for balconies should have some level of consistency with that
I
ornamentation.
think the other one's more flamboyant, that's my one.
Right. And then, is there any staff had a concern about the use of foam with cast stone over it? Is there a concern on the part of the board? I don't know that we heard that concern with the material, so we'll strike that.
But the issue, at least for me, was the sense of the massiveness of the eave, just the whole height of it and the massiveness, not necessarily the material.
Okay, so the
Scale.
heaviness of the details, we heard that around the entry and the eaves and perhaps other details on the rear around the openings.
Yeah, it wasn't
So we'll
material as
include
much as
those.
scale.
Right, the scale of the details and the material of the materiality of the details
Yeah,
is
the use of
acceptable.
foam with concrete is no problem with that.
Okay, very good. I think that we have an understanding of the board's wishes, and what we will do is we'll take that readback and we will embellish them with the examples that you've given in your discussion.
Very good.
So I have a motion to return for redesign.
Second.
Who seconded?
Mr. Garagos?
All right, so we have a motion to return for redesign made by Ms. Sakai and second by Mr. Geragos. This is a roll call. Mr. Geragos?
Yes.
Ms. Sakai?
Yes.
Mr. Zarifian?
Yes.
And Chairman Malikian?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 4-0.
All right, are we ready for the next one?
While we're waiting,
Yes.
you have one moment. We do need to have a motion and a second and a roll call in order to continue the last case on tonight's agenda. I know that we made that announcement at the beginning of the meeting that this item, this would be for 3600 North Verdugo Road, would be continued to a date uncertain, and it will be publicly renoticed.
I'll make a motion to
But
such.
we need a motion and a second.
Do you have a
So,
motion? Do you
Just
have a
that.
second?
okay, we have a motion motion made by Board Member Garagos, a second by Board Member Zarifian,
Yes.
and Board Member Garagos,
Yes.
Board Member Zarifian,
Yes.
Board Member Sakai,
Yes.
and Chairman Malikian.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes 4-0 to continue. And, oh, I'm sorry, you know what?
Sorry, we're
we
still-
apologize. We're going to have to take the conversation out behind the double glass doors. Thank you so much, because we do have one more other case on tonight's agenda, so.
Nobody here.
Forgot we're not the only one. Okay,
Are we ready?
yes.
He stepped out, I don't know. Back in time.
I had to put this up on the TV screens for you,
Did it
too.
work? Here, no, I'll do that for you, Mike.
I've got it. Okay. Chair, members of the board.
You want to wait for the applicant to come back or not?
Go ahead and take that. All right. So our next project is case number PDR 2011-32, and it's a first-time submittal located at 1557 Sheridan Road. First-time submittal. The project.
Should we wait until the applicant comes back, or?
Oh, yeah, you want to. Sorry about that. Well, I think this will be okay. This is going to be.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, he's all right, because there's no big controversy on this, from what I can tell so far. So the project is a 1,277 square foot addition. It's actually three parts, real quickly here. We have our site plan, we have one floor, we have a roof, our elevations. This is the front as you drive in, and as we look at the site, up here, you can see, here's a site plan and topo. You drive in, it's a flag lot between these two properties, come in here, and that front entry right there is that garage that you drive into. It's about 130 feet back up, and it's fairly high, sitting above. This is the only property that has any view, if at all. You can see down to it, but it's pretty much everything is obscured because it's a very steep slope. This is extremely steep right through here in particular. So as you face it, you come in this way to the south side, which is right here. This is on this elevation over here. And there's an existing patio, and they're just going to close it off. And then on the back of the house, they're extending a new addition which comes out to the east, which is this side, the opposite of that, obviously, and then that addition extends it out this way here. But this roof line is basically there. They're just filling in with some walls and glass, and that's this area here, and the addition, the new floor area coming this way, and then you have a deck that wraps around. The deck is going to be very low at I had him change it because he had an issue with the railing. So it's a 2.4, less than the 30 inches all the way around, and it's on this pad. And even though the entire site has a slope of about, I think, 37%, 34%, this area right here is all one big pad, very flat through here. Now there's one oak tree, and there's 8 altogether, but there's one oak tree in this area here that is not in great condition. It would be, the deck would require it to be removed, and the urban forester has given them a permit to do that. There are only because I think I noted in the staff report, there are panels up here, the solar. From a design point of view, there's nothing we can really do. Zoning staff has some jurisdiction in terms of height and locations, but from a design point of view. But since it is a feature, I did note it on the plans. We have our window here, as well as in the back, there's some colors sort of showing how it works. You have a color board. There's a perspective of what this is going to look like.
Those windows are matching existing?
Well, they're going to take them all out and put in new.
Well, it's all new, okay.
Yes, because one of the things, sort of jumping ahead of myself, but one of the things in the design and detailing section of the report, they had multiple windows on the house. For instance, in the original one, there was some casements that were steel, and then when there was a couple of additions, one to the garage.
Excuse me, you're going to just sit back and then we'll call you and you can tell us. Jumping the gun.
But anyway, so they had a mixture. They have some vinyl, they've got some aluminum, and they had some steel, and they were different patterns and sizes. And so they so anyway, now they're trying to have a more uniformity. So let me backtrack a little bit, because I did sort of jump out and about. When we go down our categories, and we look at the different headings that we have, this is located in what we call the Chevy Chase area, or the Ranch Homes Estates area of the city. And as far as our site planning, we feel that the property is very consistent with the neighborhood homes. When you look at the photographs of the neighborhood, you'll find many of the homes have a similar ranch feel or style, and in fact, if you look at the existing house and you look at the addition, it's basically carrying the entire same theme. When it comes to the mass and scale, it's the same thing. They're maintaining that one-story addition. It feels like it's just a continuation of the existing, almost as if it was built at the same time. So staff felt that the mass and scale was appropriate. For design and detailing, as I mentioned, I sort of jumped ahead there. The big issue was the windows, and there was a lot of inconsistency in the window patterns. There were two additions, one to extend the garage 5 feet back in the 80s, and one to add on the north side of the house a projection out here, and the windows on here are different than the rest of the house, where there were some casements and things. Now they're going to try to have that one, I believe it's the style window right here, which would be an Anderson window, sliders. Staff did have one comment, and we felt that the theme is pretty much sliders, but we noticed over here, now this is on the north side of the house, this is not the addition, we felt that maybe these windows should either be casement or sliding windows, and there's one over here, I believe this is a bathroom. On the other side of the house, the same thing. If you see the whole theme, it's fairly uniform, has a nice overall appearance. That staff felt that the applicant had worked with us to try to address all these issues that we had discussed, and we were recommending approval with that one condition.
Do we have any questions? Do we want to open up?
I just want him to answer
Okay.
the window question.
All right.
All he has to do. He can make
Young
it
Chun?
easy on you.
Please state your name and address, please.
Yes. My name is Myung Chung, 9040 Terrastar Avenue, Suite 105, El Monte, California, 91731. I really appreciate Mr. Baxter coordinating our project with also a staff architect. And then we came up with the design. I've been hearing about, flamboyant against the humble. Our design is so humble, we don't even know where the entry is. And, but anyway, we have, as I gave you the photographs of the existing windows, there are several different type of window, aluminum window with mullions, and some are no mullions, and there are like old casement steel window. But we like to use the Anderson window, which has a wood inside with some sort of reinforced plastic on the outside. So that's very quality material. And then we are going to have very simple. The roof line is just to maintain existing roof line, so there is really no change in the design element of the house. We just clean up the windows, so make it look very nice and clean with the kind of a little modern-looking color of the stucco, with the kind of deck outside, and solar panel for future energy saving. And then this house is well hidden behind the flag lot, so there is no impact to the neighbor at all. So that's why there is no neighbor, in the present today. With that, I really appreciate Mr. Baxter with the condition of changing the double hung window to casement is not a
Casement, yeah.
yeah, that's not a problem at all. Yeah, we can do that. With that, I'd like to ask you a favor to approve this project tonight so that we can move on with the
Casement is-
renovation.
Like a door. Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I make a motion that we approve 2 PDR 2011-032-A
Did you want to do the casement versus the double hung?
with the condition noted.
Yes.
Because my question is, if we already have double hung on the bathroom windows, why not just keep it double hung here? Do we have casement?
I don't think they
anymore?
look as good. I mean, for this style home, I think the double hung is...
The casement would be like
swing.
two leaves or single?
I don't think those would be
But-
doubles. I don't think those would be singles.
If it's single, that's okay, because if it's double, then you have this line at the center and
Yeah.
kind of
I don't think
breaks it
doubles
up
would
to-
really... I don't think double hung would be consistent with the house. With where it's
Yeah,
going.
I don't personally have a big problem with that, because the proportion of those are different, but the
I didn't mean to stop you from giving comments. Give comments. I thought I was John. I thought I answered. That's fine. Go ahead, comment.
No, I was just thinking as I was talking, I don't have a big problem, because especially it's like behind the house, and it's not like it's going to make and break the house. That's why I'm kind of...
Oh, give him flexibility, you mean?
Yeah, I think you can suggest that, but
Oh, keep it as a suggestion rather than a
yeah.
condition. I could support that. I could add that to the motion.
Consideration?
Make it a consideration, not a condition.
Okay, so consider, if I may, Mr. Chair, members of the board, our staff condition that says that all double-hung windows be either slider or casement, I could just change that to consider that all double-hung windows.
Right.
We'll
Well,
use
just
the same one.
the ones on the plan that are an issue. I mean, you could say, you could
Well,
do
there's
that.
only those ones that are on
Yeah.
that.
I mean, he's changing all of them, so what we're saying is, on the back where it's not really seen, he would have flexibility.
Yes.
Not on the whole house, because he's changing all the windows.
Well, there's only one other window on the other side.
Okay.
So
He was
there,
changing them all, though. Basically.
yeah.
So two
Yeah, there's
Right,
one-
but if you make the condition, then they could all be double hung, which I think would be unfortunate.
No, our condition would not be to be double-hung. Real quick here, this, not that complicated.
I know, it's getting complicated.
It's-
I voted for approval, so.
So it's right here, we have these are proposed for double hung, and then on the other side, we have one. Everything else is slider.
I'm saying, but if you said they had,
And there are only 6 windows. Let's change that one.
And then
It's not that many windows.
other side?
Okay, yes, I'm sorry, yes, I see.
They're either all double hung or they're all casement,
okay,
right?
I think actually, if you're changing all the windows, you might change all the rest of the 7, and they're not very large windows, and it will be very consistent to casement as.
Yes, well, that was our condition.
Yeah, then.
what I'm saying is, you were saying, what we were commenting on is that we liked casement,
Yes.
and that on the back area where those few windows were, it would have flexibility if you wanted to do a double.
So on the north, except the north elevation
Right.
would be consideration.
Right, those would be, right, but the rest would be casement.
All, okay.
Right, that's the point.
Very good. Do you have a
Flexibility
problem?
at the back.
That's the north elevation.
No
That's the
sliding,
north elevation.
all casement, except on the north, where they could be double hung.
If they wanted to.
And casement.
Do you have a problem with the sliders?
I have no problem with anything. It's just
Not
They can do whatever they want on those windows, they can do whatever they want.
promise we're going to be out before 7.
Very good, all right.
I voted for approval.
So that's on the north side, so the north side, he has the option
Yes.
of double hung or,
Anything he wants to do. Anything he wants to do.
Sliders.
There are double hung windows right now that are proposed on the south side for the restrooms or for the bathroom.
And the garage.
Is the board requiring that those bathroom windows be casement windows?
Casement.
Or are they?
sliders,
Okay.
casement or slider on the south
Okay,
side.
great.
Yes.
Just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah. So south side change, north side option.
Double hung on the south elevation.
Very good. All right, so I have a motion by Mr. Garagos. Do I have a second?
Second.
Oh, really? Okay.
I think it's great he's changing all
You
the
sound
windows.
like you were,
All right. All right, Mr. Garagos,
yes.
Ms. Sakai,
Yes.
Mr. Zarifian,
Yes.
and Mr. Malikian.
Yes.
Okay, the 4-0 with that condition regarding windows.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Do we have the minutes?
Yes.
Before everybody leaves?
Everyone needs. We actually have 3
Yes.
sets of minutes. Now, what I'd like to do is to
Hey, I was here for 2.
bring your attention to the July 21st.
Well, let's go with July 7th first.
Yes.
Let's just do
Well,
the
July 7th, now, that's an unusual situation because July 7th and July 7th and August 4th were both joint meetings of the DRB.
Right.
I just noticed when we were when reviewing these minutes that we did not list who the chairperson pro tem was.
Now,
So I remember-
Chairperson pro tem, I was for the July 7th,
July 7th, okay.
but on the July 4th,
Which was noted actually in the minutes.
wait,
And I believe it was either Board Member Palmer or was it Board Member Sakai?
It's in the minutes.
Pardon?
It's in the minutes.
Oh, it is April Sakai. I apologize. Okay, so just the ones for July 7th does not list the chairperson pro tem. So,
Didn't we have an application there, too? A project? Yeah, I thought we did a project.
no, we actually had a project for there was a project
Okay.
before the joint meeting, and then
Right.
we,
So where's the
and
minutes
it-
for the 7th, then, for that project?
July 4th, you were the chair.
August 4th.
I mean,
Where's the
August-
July 7th minutes for that,
Oh,
for
wait,
our
we need
actual
to-
meeting?
I believe the clerical staff.
Okay, that was just clarifying. That was- Okay.
So you're
July
right, correct.
28th
We
has
should
to
have,
go to the other
well,
board.
we'll bring that to you next
Yeah,
time.
just stick one item, maybe we should
Exactly.
put off on this one.
Well, we wanted it
She
because
was-
this was an actual joint meeting, and so we wanted the joint,
And I
it
wasn't
was a
here.
completely separate meeting, so we'd have to
Oh, gotcha,
present the
gotcha.
DRB back. for the-
Okay, so we need a
Okay.
minutes for July 7th for our meeting.
Correct. We will bring those to you at the
Okay.
next
So
meeting.
July 7th, we pass.
I make a motion, we pass the
Okay.
minutes for July 7th. Yes?
You have a motion, I
The
have a-
joint meeting, for the joint
for
meeting.
the
in
joint
July.
meeting, I have a motion by Board Member Garagos, and do I have a second?
Sure, a second.
Moving it to
I'm
the
sorry,
next meeting.
which, would
What?
Board Member Sakai or Zarifian? No,
Griffin.
We're moving which part of the meeting minutes?
we are not. We do not have for you at this point in time the minutes from the DRB meeting of DRB 2. There was
We
a
met
meeting
before.
with one case that evening before the joint meeting, which
Same
you
day,
not have in front of you. So,
same day
July
earlier.
7th.
Right.
for July 7th. So,
618 Palm Drive, Sycamore Ave, North Verdugo Road.
Yeah. You have it. You're the only one that has it.
I have
you're the only one that has it? Okay.
Have it, the minutes
Not
for
have
July
the
7th?
It's not even here.
What? It was sent to me.
Really?
I believe they were sent to you. I just don't have a copy of
In
it.
your
I
So,
don't have a copy.
Should be in your
Just
packet.
have only 4th and 18th.
Well, we don't have a, we're just going to continue that until we all have the complete package. So that's easier.
Do you have a copy of it?
correct.
No, we don't
Don't
have,
have
But
copies.
so you didn't get
Yeah.
mailed the
They don't
minutes.
have.
Right. So
we
they
don't have copies,
it.
unless you have.
You don't, you're the lucky one.
This time I'm glad I got it. Like last
Yes.
time I didn't get it.
All right, so 7th is continued.
7th joint meeting, we
Okay.
have a motion and a second.
So this would be, forgive me, because
Why do you
both
think
Board
it's
Member
second?
Sakai and Board Member Zarifian jumped in to second that motion regarding the minutes for the joint
Griffin,
meeting.
he said it
Okay.
first. I heard it first.
Mr.
7th for the
Zarifian.
I was
workshop.
confused.
Okay.
Because I had
So-
the minutes.
Okay,
no
again,
one
this
else
is,
does.
right,
No
this
one
would
else
be
does.
just for the joint DRB
Right.
meeting for
July
July
7th.
7th. We will be bringing back the DRB minutes for DRB 2 at the next meeting.
Thank you.
So,
Two separate minutes for
two
July 7th.
separate minutes.
I have it. We're not doing it
No
today.
one else
No,
has it.
okay.
No one else has it.
Next is the
You are
joint
special.
meeting.
Yes.
You are
The
special.
joint- Okay.
So,
I'm just confused.
sorry for the confusion, but going back to the vote for the joint DRB minutes for July
Motion
7th.
and a second.
Motion by Garagos, a second by Board Member Zarifian. Board Member Garagos?
Yes.
Board Member Zarifian?
Yes.
Board Member Sakai?
Yes.
Chairman Malikian?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes 4-0, and I believe Chairman Malikian will be signing those minutes.
Yes.
On to the minutes of July the 21st. Now, this was a regular Design Review Board meeting for DRB 2. We had two cases on the agenda. One was a continuation, the other one was in approval. So Board Member Zarifian was absent that day. So do I have a motion to approve the minutes of July 21st?
Make a motion to approve the minutes of July 21st.
I'll second it.
Sakai, seconded by Board Member Garagos. Board Member Sakai?
Yes.
Board Member Garagos?
Yes.
Chairman Malikian?
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0. And now we are back to the joint DRB meeting minutes of August the 4th. And it appears that
You can do it. You can.
Board Member Garagos was absent.
I was in Philadelphia at the time. Actually, I was in Long Island.
Unless you
Island?
said no, and then
Okay, so the minutes can be approved for
What have you guys had?
sidebars going on here.
Nothing.
I know.
sorry.
So I need a motion either by Board Member Sakai or Board
no,
Member.
no. She was
Pro
the
tem.
chair pro tem. So I move to approve the minutes.
I have a motion
Second.
by Mr. Malikian, a second by Board Member Zarifian. Board Member Malikian?
Yes.
Board Member Zarifian?
Yes.
And that was Chairperson Pro Tem
Yes.
Sakai. Okay, the motion passes 3-0. And with that said, Stephanie, do you have any staff announcements?
Nope.
There are no staff
I
announcements.
will be absent the next
On September the 1st.
first. Yes.
Okay, so noted. Is,
Can I just make one comment about this one? I forgot to say it.
Yes.
Can you ask them to insert the house into a very lovely streetscape that they have?
Yes, that'd be nice.
I forgot to mention.
we can go ahead and request that
Thank
as
you.
well. Not as part of the official record, since the official record is closed, but we can request that as a, okay, but we can request that of the
Thank you.
Okay, with that said, is there a motion to adjourn the meeting? Yes. All in favor? Aye.